The cursor blinked steady, patient, like a quiet heartbeat on the screen. One final line of code. One last signature. My voice entered through the biometric gateway I had spent 6 months designing. Was all that stood between Carrington Systems and a $130 million defense contract with Vanguard Aerotech. 28 years of work, all leading to this moment. I took a breath, feeling the strange calm that comes when everything is ready. No more drafts, no more red lines, no more midnight calls across time zones. Just one voice key. Mine. Then the door opened. Gregory Holt, our CEO, didn't bother knocking. That was never his style. Always confident, always rehearsed. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman followed him in young polish, dressed in a pale mint pantsuit. That probably cost more than my first car. Her heels clicked with precision. She held a tablet like it was a badge of honor. Elena, Gregory said, too casual. This won't take long. I turned from my monitor. What is it? We're initiating a leadership transition. Effective immediately. I blinked. I'm retiring tomorrow. You've done more than enough, he cut in, gesturing toward the woman beside him. This is Kendra. She'll be taking over. His niece. Of course. Kendra smiled like we were catching up over brunch. It's such an honor. I've been shadowing digital strategy upstairs. I didn't move. The secure window on my screen was still open. The cursor blinked next to the line that read, Final voice verification required. Only I could complete it. Gregory didn't know that. Neither did Kendra. He cleared his throat. Security will help with the transition. Your things will be sent to your residence. My mouth opened, then closed. No use. I stood slowly, ignoring Kendra's extended hand. I glanced once more at the screen. The system waited for me, unbothered, unreadable. It wouldn't accept anyone else. Not today. Not ever. Congratulations, Kendra, I said evenly. I hope you know what you're walking into. Her smile tightened. I logged out without closing the window, picked up my blazer, and walked out of the office I'd built a legacy in. Behind me, the cursor kept blinking. The door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time in years, no one looked up when I entered. My office, my name gone from the glass wall, already bore someone else's: Kendra Carrington, Director of Emerging Ventures. The title sounded like something stitched onto a vanity project. I crossed the room and sat down at my desk. The chair was still warm from the morning. My shelves had been thinned. A cardboard box sat neatly beside the filing cabinet, probably placed there by facilities while I was being escorted out of my own legacy. No one came to say goodbye. Not Laia from procurement, who used to call me her anchor. Not Brent from IT, who once swore he'd never push a release without my review. They kept their eyes on their screens, fingers typing at keyboards that I suspected weren't even on. I opened my top drawer. Inside was the small leather notebook I'd carried since my third promotion, softened by time. Edges worn, corners curled. Pages filled with system maps, client sketches, handwritten corrections to bad code from rushed interns. I flipped to the back where I kept the protocols, handwritten backups, initials beside every line. One folder tucked carefully beneath was labeled Gateway Final Do Not Alter. They hadn't touched it. I smiled. Not bitter, not smug, just tired. I placed the folder gently in the box and began sorting what mattered. A photo from the Zurich procurement conference, a badge from my first system launch, a certificate signed by an exec no one remembered. My personal files remained untouched on the desktop. I deleted none of it, not the security documentation, not the encrypted memos, not even the legacy interface notes. If they wanted to pretend I had never existed, I would leave them exactly what they deserved: silence and a blinking system, waiting for a voice they no longer had. The only thing I erased were the training guides I had written for the junior team. Let them build their own ladders. When the box was full, I sealed it with a single piece of tape and walked to the elevator. On the way down, I passed Kendra's laugh echoing from the conference wing. The coffee was hot, but I barely tasted it. My inbox was already filled by 8 a.m., not with goodbyes or farewells, but with automated newsletters and press releases I never unsubscribed from. The first headline read, Carrington's Young Visionary Seals $130 million deal. I clicked. There she was, Kendra Carrington, in my office in my chair, grinning like she'd just saved the world. The photo showed her holding my favorite ceramic mug, the one with the faded skyline on it, a gift from my old assistant 5 birthdays ago. I stared at it for a long time. The article credited her with orchestrating one of the most complex aerospace procurement deals in recent memory. She hadn't even sat in a client call. In the video attached, she spoke confidently about cutting through legacy friction and bringing modern velocity to strategic contracts. The interviewer asked who the client was. Constella. Aero Tech, she guessed, glancing off camera. Constellar Aerotech. The name was in every line of the proposal, every clause I negotiated, every footnote in the compliance appendix. I didn't comment, I didn't text anyone, I just watched. Because I knew what Kendra didn't. The system wasn't live, not yet. I had built the gateway to require 3 keys, my voice, my terminal, and my office location. All 3 had to match. That clause buried in the final compliance wrapper was tucked away like a guard dog behind a hedge. Only I could authorize the final line. It couldn't be forced, copied, or faked. Not because I wanted control, but because 6 months ago, Carrington's firewall had suffered a quiet breach that almost cost us everything. I fixed it, quietly, thoroughly. I embedded the gateway after that, and Gregory signed off on it even if he didn't read what he was signing. So let them parade, let the headlines shine. I had no platform, no spotlight. But the system I built didn't care about PR. It remembered who wrote the code. I knew the moment it happened. Not from a headline or a call, but from a single-word message that popped up on my personal phone at 11:12 a.m. Jacob, it's rejecting. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Across the river in Carrington's glass-walled boardroom, Kendra was likely sitting in my chair facing a screen that would not comply. The prompt would have been simple, in red font all caps, gateway final authorization, failed environment mismatch. She would have clicked again, re-entered the credentials, raised her voice, told Brent from IT to restart the terminal. But the system doesn't care about volume or job titles. It wanted the origin terminal. It wanted the biometric voice signature. It wanted the location of the secured node where the contract had been architected. It wanted me. Behind the scenes, Gregory was probably pacing. I could picture his jaw tight, his hands in his pockets, asking Brent to fix it. Kendra, trying to save face, might have called it a minor systems hiccup. But Jacob knew better. He had shadowed me 2 summers ago, asked too many questions for someone that junior. Bright, curious, always watching. I had shown him how I layered redundancies into mission-critical systems. Not because I expected sabotage, but because I expected shortcuts. He understood what the others didn't. The gate wasn't broken. It was doing its job. By early afternoon, the client Vanguard Aerotech sent a polite inquiry, a request for clarification on the delay. Their legal team was expecting confirmation. They didn't know yet that the system was locked, or that the only key had walked out the day before with a sealed box and a notebook full of original code. I made another cup of coffee and watched the message from Jacob sit unread. I didn't owe them panic. The system was functioning exactly as designed. The email came late in the day, nearly 5 p.m., from an address I knew by heart, mlevinsonvanguardprocure.com. Subject: quick clarification, re-final contract PDF, Elena. We received a modified version of the execution draft this morning. There are a few minor discrepancies from our last joint review dates, metadata shifts, formatting edits. Also, we weren't informed of any change in project leadership. Are you still point on this, best Marcus? I read it twice, then once more. Marcus was never careless. If he had reached out, it meant something wasn't adding up. I didn't answer his question directly. Instead, I typed back, Marcus, please review the footer on page 47 of the PDF you received. I didn't sign it. I didn't explain. I just pressed send and let the weight of the embedded clause do the talking. That line had been inserted nearly 5 months ago during a routine compliance review. Gregory had waved it through, without reading, too busy prepping a board deck on digital resilience. The clause read simply, final execution pending biometric gateway origin verification. To anyone outside the system, it meant nothing, but to anyone inside it was a firewall. A lock on the lock. 22 minutes later, Marcus responded. Elena understood. We've escalated this to internal counsel. No further movement on the agreement until resolved. Thanks for the heads up. No panic, no accusation, just precision. Marcus always had that. It's why we worked well together, because when it came to critical infrastructure, neither of us blinked. Carrington hadn't even given him a courtesy call. No transition plan, no formal notice. Just a new face, new title, and a contract version that didn't match the last approved draft. They hadn't just mishandled protocol, they'd insulted the process. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. The system was holding, the client was watching, and the clock on Carrington's deal had just stopped ticking. The next attempt came not from Kendra, but Gregory himself. I heard about it from Jacob, who sent a quiet message sometime after midnight. Jacob. They brought in external consultants. Gregory called Jessica Benton, former head of Carrington Security Architecture, now with a data compliance firm across the river. She was the one who gave me quiet sign-off on the biometric lock, back when it was just a theoretical solution to a near breach. She trusted me then enough to approve a protocol most execs would have balked at. Gregory must have expected a workaround, a backdoor, a fail-safe, but I never built one. That was the point. According to Jacob, the call had been tense. Jessica reminded Gregory on record that he had reviewed and signed off on the integration, that removing it would require a full rollback of the contract logs and could irreversibly corrupt the metadata trail. She reportedly used the phrase, tamper-proof by design. Kendra, from what I heard, lost composure completely. Press requests had begun flooding in after someone, probably a junior staffer, leaked an internal compliance email that read, "We can't override Meyer protocol contract, unexecutable." The subject line alone was enough to fuel speculation. By 9:40 a.m., Aerotimes published a breaking headline. Carrington deal stalls amid legacy system lockout. And there in the third paragraph it began. Sources confirm the 130-minute agreement is on hold due to an embedded security protocol authored by former executive Elena Ward, who reportedly retained exclusive biometric access. I didn't comment. I didn't post. I read the line again, holds the keys. They had wiped my name from the presentation decks, scrubbed me from the press photos. But the system hadn't forgotten. The client hadn't forgotten. And now, neither had the public. No interviews, no rebuttals. I simply sat at my dining table with my tea cooling beside me, watching the truth slip into daylight, one line of code at a time. Gregory's email came at 7:13 a.m., sharp, short, polished, desperate beneath the formatting. Subject: request to meet urgent. Elena, we'd appreciate the opportunity to speak regarding the current situation. Please let me know when and where you're available. Gregory Holt, I replied. 5 minutes later, 1:00 p.m. Bryony Hensley's office. Bryony had been my personal counsel for nearly a decade. Quiet, exacting, and allergic to small talk. Her glass-walled conference room sat on the 12th floor of a modest brick building off Lexington Avenue. No company logos, just clean paper, sharper minds, and no room for revisionist history. When I arrived, Bryony was already seated, reading glasses perched low. I slid the folder across the table without a word. Inside, a signed code authorship agreement, digital timestamps from the system logs, a control clause labeled Final Gate Authority initialed by Jessica and Gregory 9 months earlier. At 1:03 p.m., Gregory walked in alone. His tie was loosened. His face looked 5 years older than the week before. He extended a hand. I didn't take it. "Elena," he said, voice low, rehearsed. "Thank you for meeting. I know this didn't go the way it should have." I let silence answer. He sat down across from me and gestured toward the folder. "Is that it?" Bryony slid it closer to him without a word. He skimmed the top page, then pressed a hand to his temple. "We need your help," he said. "The client's threatening to walk. The board is spooked. Kendra, she wasn't ready for this." I kept my voice even. "You didn't just replace me. You erased me. No notice. No transition. You handed my work to someone who couldn't pronounce the client's name." He flinched. "I'll authorize a bonus, any number." "That won't be necessary," Bryony said. I stood. "You treated me like a footnote, but I built the system you're now locked out of." I'm not your backup plan. I'm the reason that contract existed at all. Gregory looked at me, broken open by consequence. At the door, I paused just long enough to leave him one final truth. Legacy isn't free. The press release dropped at 7:42 a.m. I was halfway through my first cup of black coffee when my phone buzzed. The subject line alone told the story. Vanguard terminates 130 million contract, citing leadership breakdown. I clicked. The words were clinical, precise. Due to protocol concerns, execution inconsistencies, and unnotified personnel transitions. Vanguard Aerotech will withdraw from the pending agreement with Carrington Systems effective immediately. It didn't name names. It didn't have to. By 9:00 a.m., Carrington's stock was down 6%. By noon, it had slipped past 9%. Analysts called it unexpected instability. But anyone who'd been watching closely saw exactly what it was: the cost of arrogance. Kendra Carrington, once plastered across every PR header as the new face of innovation, was quietly removed from all active projects. The internal memo, which leaked within the hour, cited leadership realignment and pending executive review. Jacob messaged me at 10:12 a.m. Jacob, you're trending. Industry boards, Slack threads, LinkedIn groups. They're calling you the architect. I let the words sit. I hadn't planned any of it. I hadn't leaked anything. I hadn't forced the system to fail. It had simply held its ground. The failure was theirs. The decision to cut corners, to dismiss expertise, to hand a multi-million-dollar security protocol to someone who treated it like a spreadsheet. I took another sip of coffee and looked out the window. The city moved as it always did, unapologetically fast, blinking through decisions, headlines, losses. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was lagging behind it. I felt still, clear. Not because they lost the deal, not because the headlines had shifted, but because my silence had done more than words ever could. They tried to scrub me out of the narrative, and in doing so, they made the structure crack. Every failed login, every rejected override, every desperate headline, they didn't point to sabotage. They pointed to design. By the time the internal audit began, the system already knew what the executives refused to admit. The call came 2 days after the collapse. I was sorting through my inbox, mostly noise and industry chatter, when the screen lit up with Marcus Levinson's name. I hadn't spoken to him since the clause surfaced in the footer of the altered contract. "Hi, Marcus. Elena." He said, his tone calm, almost deliberate. "We've had time to assess everything, internally and externally." I waited. He wasn't the type to waste breath. "We'd like to retain you," he said. "Not as a vendor. Not through Carrington. As an independent advisor." The words sat heavy in the air. "You mean as a contractor?" I asked, more from habit than confusion. "No," he said. "As a partner. Strategic counsel. Confidential, autonomous. We're building a new internal architecture team. We want your voice in that room." He hesitated just enough to make the next line matter. "And frankly," he said, "the compensation package makes your Carrington salary look like a rounding error." I leaned back in my chair. The part of me that used to flinch at praise didn't stir. I wasn't interested in reliving Carrington under a new logo. I didn't want another nameplate or another chair that could be pulled out from under me. I'm not rebuilding what I said. I'm not replicating Carrington anywhere else. Marcus didn't flinch. "We're not asking for what you had. We're asking for you. Your process, your judgment. The part of the deal that never lived in a dashboard." He said it plainly, and for the first time in weeks, I heard something I hadn't realized I missed: clarity. No politics. No window dressing. Just recognition. "All right," I said. "Send the paperwork." When I ended the call, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt chosen. Not for being marketable, not for being legacy, but for being right. 2 days later, I signed from a quiet workspace in Midtown. No cubicle, no swipe badge, just my own hours, a clean laptop, and a name that no one dared erase. A week later, I sat by the window in my new office, a quiet corner space with light that didn't buzz and air that didn't hum with forced urgency. No nameplate, no inbox rules. Just me, a sturdy desk, and a plant I'd already forgotten to water twice. My tea was still warm when the phone buzzed. Jacob Gregory removed this morning. Interim CEOs from outside. No mention of Kendra. System logs leaked, full audit trails public. I stared at the message for a moment, then typed my reply without thinking. Told you systems never forget their author. I closed the laptop. There was nothing else to say. I hadn't released the logs. I hadn't needed to. The system itself had kept every line of failed override. Every attempt logged. Every misuse of credentials time-stamped and signed in code. No one had bothered to learn. It was all their proof that what they'd called over-engineered had saved them from worse. Or maybe not saved them at all, just held the mirror up long enough for the cracks to show. They thought I needed the chair, the nameplate, the polite nod in the hallway. But those things were decoration, symbols, easy to remove, easy to forget. What wasn't easy to erase was design. What stayed long after the headlines changed was the structure I'd left behind. Across the room, my inbox dinged again, an invitation to speak at a security conference in DC. A request for insight on legacy integration protocols. I didn't respond. Not yet. I had no interest in becoming a symbol. I didn't need applause for doing the job right. I just wanted to work, to build, on my terms. I lifted my tea and sat back as the late light pooled across the floor, steady and unbothered. There was no celebration, no spotlight. But I had something better than vindication. I had clarity. They had written me out of their ending. But I had already authored the part that mattered. The part that held. The part that outlasted. And quietly, without needing to say a word, the system remembered.